Most people lose their wallet and panic, maybe cancel a few cards, doubt their luck, and move on. In New York City alone, over 100,000 wallets vanish every year, never to be seen again. But one of them sparked a $2.3 million investment deal. This isn't just a lost and found story, this is the jaw-dropping, true money story of Logan. Have you ever hit that point where you're just done, not angry, not even sad, just emotionally overdrafted? That was Logan, 32 years old, once a rising star in the New York City startup scene, but now he is broke, burned out and bunking on a friend's couch with no clear way forward. A year ago, Logan was pitching his startup to investors in glass conference rooms, all wide-eyed and hopeful. He believed in the product, some wearable tech that could read your stress levels and help you manage anxiety in real time. He called it Pocket Pulse. Investors nodded, smiled, even dropped phrases like game changer, but when it came time to put money on the table, they backed out, one by one. The funding dried up, the team splintered, the office shut down, and for Logan, well, he just kind of unraveled. He maxed out his credit cards trying to keep things afloat, he took on debt just to survive, and now, most days, he found himself piecing together enough cash to afford a $1 slice of pizza from the corner spot and praying that some gig, any gig, would come through. He sold his clothes, canceled his gym membership, and stopped taking calls from family. Pride had long left the chat. That Tuesday was cold, gray, and wet, one of those New York City mornings that soak straight through your socks and bones. Logan hadn't slept well, he rarely did anymore. He was running on caffeine fumes and survival instinct. He was on his way to check out a potential gig, a freelance copywriting job someone had messaged him about on Reddit of all places. Nothing was promised, but it was something. Maybe, he figured he'd grab a $1.50 coffee on the way, just to keep from crashing during whatever bootleg interview was waiting on the other end. So he grabbed his thin jacket, shoved on some beat-up sneakers, and headed out. He tucked his wallet, his last $3, a business card from an old networking event, and a crumpled napkin with a sketch of Pocket Pulse, into his back pocket. It was the only version of that sketch that still existed. He'd drawn it one night when he couldn't sleep, years ago, when the idea still felt alive. It didn't look like much, just a doodle of a wristband, a few arrows, and some scribbled notes, but it meant something to him. He got on the subway, rode 6 stops, numb and silent. He got off near Delancey and walked the 2 blocks to the bodega, and somewhere in that shuffle, between wet sidewalks, crowded trains, and pockets of his own distraction, he lost the wallet. He didn't notice it right away. He went to pay for the coffee, patted his back pocket, and didn't feel anything there. He checked his jacket, his bag, the floor, the counter, nothing. The guy behind the bodega counter just stared. Logan offered a weak smile and said, "Guess I'm not having coffee today." He stepped outside, still patting himself down, trying to retrace steps. Maybe he dropped it on the train, maybe it was at the station, maybe someone picked it up. But deep down, he already knew the wallet was gone, and with it, the last $3 he owned, the napkin, the business card, all gone. He stood there, rain dripping off the edge of his hood, watching yellow cabs blur past. People hustled around him, umbrellas bobbing like mushrooms in a concrete forest. "Losing my wallet," he said later, "was the final slap from the universe. I didn't even have money to care anymore." He didn't cry, he didn't yell, he just laughed. One of those hollow, out-of-body laughs you let out when there's nothing else left to do, because what else could he do? He turned around and walked back toward the subway. What he didn't know then, what no one would have guessed, is that losing that wallet was the best thing that ever happened to him. But we'll get to that. This is just the beginning. 3 days passed since Logan lost his wallet, and he hadn't given it much thought since, mostly because he couldn't afford to. He was still broke, still couch hopping, still hustling to land any gig that would keep the lights, well, technically his friends' lights on. The wallet was a memory, a mildly painful one, sure, but at this point, Logan had been numbed by life enough that it didn't sting like it should have. Then, out of nowhere, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, out of state. He almost ignored it, but something told him to pick it up. "Hello?" he said, flat, ready to hang up if it was a time waster or some energy company offering a limited time savings plan. But what came through stopped him cold. "Hi, is this Logan?" he replied. "Yeah, this is going to sound strange, but I found your wallet." There was a pause, not silence. He could hear coffee shop chatter in the background, but a pause in his brain as he processed the words. You did what? He asked again in disbelief. I found your wallet, a few days ago, outside a building on Mercer Street. He blinked. Wait, seriously? Seriously, she replied. But I didn't want to just mail it back. There's something in it I need to talk to you about. Something you drew. That's when the suspicion kicked in. Is this some prank? Is she going to ask for money to return it? But then she added, I'd really like to meet in person, if you're free today. Logan was broke, skeptical, and slightly paranoid, but he was also curious, and when you've got nothing to lose, curiosity usually wins. Okay, he said cautiously. Where? They met at a cafe downtown, not the kind Logan normally went to, but this place had mood lighting, exposed brick walls, and cappuccinos that cost more than his daily food budget. She was already seated when he arrived, in her late 20s, sharp blazer, confident but kind face. On the table in front of her was his wallet. He reached for it, but she stopped him gently. Wait, she said. There's something you should see first. She slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was old, creased, and stained from rain, but unmistakable, the napkin sketch, the one from his wallet. His heart skipped. Where did you? She cut in before he could land. You drew this? She asked. He looked at her, then at the sketch and said, yeah, a long time ago. She leaned in, her voice lower now. It's called Pocket Pulse, right? His eyebrows lifted and he said, yeah, how do you know that? My boss saw it. He thinks it's brilliant and he asked me to find the person who created it. Logan was speechless. He didn't even remember the last time someone called one of his ideas brilliant. She smiled. He's in tech, investments, mostly. He's different but smart, and when he saw this, he said, verbatim, this is either genius or totally insane. Either way, I want to meet the guy who thought of it. Logan blinked. Wait, you mean your boss? Like, he saw this napkin sketch and wants to meet me, based on that? She nodded. He's not normal, trust me, but he's real and he's very serious. I told him you'd probably think it was crazy and he said, good, most genius things start that way. Logan leaned back. His mind was racing. Part of him still thought this was some elaborate prank, but part of him, deep down, felt something like hope. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. What does he want? He asked. She smiled and said, he wants to know if the idea is really yours. Silence hung for a moment, then she added, he's free this afternoon. Are you in? And just like that, Logan's life began to shift. He didn't know it yet, but the decision he was about to make would change everything. The building didn't even have a name on the front, just a matte black door in the middle of Soho that looked more like an art gallery than the headquarters of a millionaire investor. Logan double-checked the address the woman had texted him and buzzed in. The door clicked open. Inside, it was all concrete floors, plants in impossible-looking pots, and open space, minimalist. In a, this cost $10 million, kind of way, a tall guy in a hoodie, joggers, and barefoot, yes, barefoot, walked in with a green smoothie in one hand and a German shepherd trailing behind him. This is the man he came to see, Leo Mathers. The man behind 3 of the top AI acquisitions of the last 5 years, known for living off the grid 6 months out of the year and investing only in things that made him feel chemically excited. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours, but his eyes were sharp and alive. You're Logan, he said, not as a question. Logan nodded, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked in his wrinkled shirt and $15 sneakers. Leo pointed to a glass-walled room to the side and said, let's find out if you're what you say you are. Before Logan could ask what that meant, Leo turned and walked into the room. Logan followed. The room was empty except for a giant whiteboard, a stack of dry erase markers, and a stool. Leo leaned against the wall and sipped his smoothie. All right, he said. If this Pocket Pulse thing is really yours, pitch it to me. Logan blinked and said, like right now? Leo nodded. Right now, one shot, no prep, no notes. Just your brain, and if it's truly your baby, let's see if you can raise it. And with that, Leo sat down cross-legged on the floor like a kid at story time. Logan's palms instantly started sweating. His stomach made a weird sound. He hadn't eaten all day, hadn't slept well the night before, and definitely hadn't expected this. He looked at the whiteboard, blank, like his mind for a full 5 seconds. But then, something clicked. Something old and familiar. He picked up a marker. Okay, he said slowly, turning around. It's called Pocket Pulse, a wearable device that measures micro-changes in your heart rate, sweat levels, and skin temperature to detect stress before you feel it. He started writing, drawing, and talking faster. Most people react to stress too late. Pocket Pulse gives you real-time feedback. If you're getting stressed, it buzzes gently and offers breathing techniques through an app or suggests breaks which it learns your patterns over time. He flipped between the whiteboard and Leo. Stress is a $300 billion health issue in America alone. Chronic stress leads to heart disease, burnout, even early death. This could save lives, literally. He was sweating, nervous, hungry, but locked in. He pulled stories from his old pitch days, mentioned his dad, who had passed away from a stress-related stroke, shared how he came up with the idea after burning out while working 16-hour days in his startup life. He threw out user personas, sketched marketing funnels, even made up a potential jingle on the fly. He had no idea where it was coming from, it just poured out. By the end, the whiteboard looked like a genius scientist's wall. His shirt was damp, his voice was hoarse, and Leo is stone-faced, totally unreadable. He stood up, walked to the board, and stared at it for a long moment. Then, finally, he turned to Logan, and smiled. "I'll fund it," Logan exhaled, knees nearly buckling in relief. "But," Leo added, holding up a finger, "on one condition." Logan braced. "You have to build the prototype yourself, no handoffs, no consultants. If this thing's coming from your brain, I want your fingerprints all over it." Logan stared at him. He didn't know the first thing about building hardware anymore. He didn't have the tools, or the team, but deep inside, something he hadn't felt in a long time flickered. Belief. He nodded and said, "Deal," and just like that, the broke guy with $3 to his name became a man with $1 million shot, all because of a napkin and a wallet that went missing. Logan thought the hard part was over. He just poured his heart out in a no-prep pitch to a barefoot tech investor with wild eyes and a green smoothie. He nailed it. Leo smiled. Leo said he'd fund it, and then came the twist. Leo leaned against the whiteboard, arms crossed, a grin creeping onto his face like he knew exactly how insane the next words were going to sound. "One condition," he said. Logan braced himself. "You have to move into my house for 30 days, no phone, no internet, no distractions, just you, me, and the grind." Logan stared at him like he'd just grown a second head. "I'm sorry, what?" Leo repeated it, totally serious. "I don't invest in ideas, I invest in people, and I don't just fund anyone I don't fully understand. I need to see you think, build, break, rebuild. I need to know what you do when it's hard, what you do when it's boring, and what you do when it feels impossible. So, you move in, you build the prototype, you train, you pitch, and if you last 30 days in the bunker, we'll talk numbers." Logan blinked and said, "Bunker?" Leo just smiled and said, "You'll see." It sounded like a startup cult initiation. Live with a millionaire stranger. Go full digital detox, and for a month. That's so weird. But then Logan remembered his couch back at his friend's apartment, the half-empty box of crackers that was dinner the night before, the 41 cents in his bank account, and he realized something. Crazy or not, this was the best offer he'd had in years. "All right," he said slowly. "When do I move in?" 2 days later, Logan stood in front of what looked like an ultra-modern cabin just outside the city, hidden among trees, silent. Leo opened the door, barefoot again, and led him downstairs through a hidden panel behind a bookshelf. That's when he saw it. The bunker. It wasn't dark or creepy. It was like a futuristic lab meeting a luxury Airbnb. Glass screens, 3D printers, whiteboards, meditation pods, a fully stocked nutrition bar, and a sleeping nook that felt like it belonged on the moon. There were rules: no phone, no social media, no news, no outside world. Just 100% focus, just creation, just grind. And for the first few days, Logan hated it. He craved noise, distraction, even mindless scrolling. But slowly, something shifted. He began to build. He pieced together a prototype using old schematics and new ideas. He 3D printed parts, rigged sensors, wrote code, tested, failed, and tested again. He trained with Leo for investor meetings like it was the Olympics. Eye contact drills, breathing exercises, 60-second elevator pitches under pressure. Leo even threw coffee mugs at the wall mid-pitch to see if Logan would flinch. He rewrote his pitch deck 5 times. He practiced explaining the product like he was talking to a 5-year-old, then a scientist, then a burned-out nurse, then a VC shark. He slept little, ate well, grew sharper, and by week 4, he was ready. On day 30, Leo handed him a black suit jacket and said, "We're going to a rooftop." That rooftop, it belonged to one of the most exclusive buildings in Manhattan, and it was packed. 5 major investors, all curious, all watching. Leo gave him a nod. Logan stepped forward, and for 10 minutes, he told his story. Not just about pocket pull, but about burnout, survival, losing everything, and finding it again through something as random as a lost wallet. He pitched like his life depended on it, because in many ways, his life really depended on it. When he finished, there was silence, then applause. 1 week later, the call came in. A $2.3 million investment deal, signed, sealed and real. Logan stood outside the same cafe where it all started, watching traffic buzz past, holding a cup of coffee he didn't have to budget for anymore. And he smiled. "Losing my wallet didn't cost me anything," he said, half to himself. "It made me." What began as a lost wallet turned into a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and a reminder that sometimes, the smallest actions unlock the biggest doors. One twist of fate, one moment of honesty, and a multi-million-dollar future no one saw coming.